From homeless to millionaire, the black man who inspired Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Robert Harris sat back in his leather chair, the ocean breeze brushing through the open windows of the penthouse. The city's glittering skyline stretched beneath him, a playground of gold, power, and endless possibility. Every building sparkled like a trophy, every glass filled with success. Robert was the king here, the tycoon with a Midas touch. He had risen fast, built an empire on steel and sweat. No one questioned his rule. Tonight, he was dining at Millionaire, the city's most exclusive restaurant. Crystal chandeliers dropped light like liquid diamonds, and waiters moved silently, carrying plates of art. Robert wore a smile that hid a million secrets. He sipped his wine, surrounded by power players in tailored suits, laughter swirling like smoke. Then the waiter slipped a folded paper onto the table. A note, small, handwritten in bold, messy letters. "We crossed paths before. I remember the price you made me pay." Robert's heart stuttered. Cold sweat pricked his skin like needles. Across the city's wealth and light, Marcus lived in shadows. Homeless, forgotten. His clothes hung off him like ragged flags. But his eyes burned sharp and knowing. He was the ghost nobody saw, except Robert, and not by accident. The note was a crack in glass, a ripple in the calm sea. Robert's mind raced. Who was this man? What secrets did he hold? The name Marcus was like a scar from the past, buried under layers of gold and lies. Whispers floated around the restaurant like poison. Heads turned, eyes narrowed. The tension was thick, a sudden storm in a calm sky. Robert's confident mask wavered. His fingers trembled just slightly, not enough for the world to notice, but real enough for him. Marcus had a story tangled with betrayal, broken promises, and lost chances, all linked to Robert's universe of wealth. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was a reminder of what Robert had done and what he had ignored. Why now? Robert wondered, voice catching in his throat. The room grew silent except for the clink of glass and distant waves crashing. Marcus's note wasn't just a message. It was a challenge. Not about money or power. About truth. About the hollow core behind the glitter. And Robert could feel the walls closing in. The weight of eyes. The threat to his empire. The things he'd buried deep, the lives shattered along the way, were surfacing, dragging him toward a reckoning he'd never expected. The question hung in the thick air. Could Robert face what lurked in the shadows of his past? Could he confront the darkness without losing everything he'd built? Or would this encounter shatter the mirror of his perfect success forever? Something was about to explode, and Robert's life would never be the same. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Huh. And let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. The room fell silent. The low hum of conversation silenced like a whisper in a storm. Robert's heart thudded in his chest, loud and frantic as he struggled to ladder his thoughts, each step slipping a little further away from him. He stole a glance at the note. The ink bled into the paper, like dark memories surfacing, begging for attention. The air thickened, and suddenly, a shadow crossed his path. From the back of the restaurant, a figure emerged. It was Marcus, stepping out of the darkness. But he carried something. A small suitcase, frayed at the edges, almost forgotten. He moved with a purpose, eyes locked on Robert. Marcus! Robert breathed, the name tasting bitter on his tongue. He felt exposed, raw. Marcus stopped, standing in the glow of the chandelier light, and opened the suitcase with a snap. Inside were photographs, bleak images that sent a chill through Robert. Faces he recognized, places he knew all too well. Those he had stepped over, ignored, strategically erased from his perfect world. "Do you remember them?" Marcus's voice cut through the stillness. Each word was a sharp blade, slicing into Robert's facade. "Do you know what you took from them?" Gasps filled the space like sudden gusts of wind. Whispers erupted. Power players exchanged incredulous glances. Dinner plates clattered as the carefully curated atmosphere shattered. Robert's breath caught. He glanced at the images again. The sorrow captured in every captured moment, clawing at him. A child, dirt-streaked and alone. A woman with sunken eyes, begging for help. Trapped in a nightmare that Robert had once brushed aside. One photograph slid from the suitcase to the floor. Like a ghost freed from a cage, it caught the light, reflecting a truth he could no longer hide from. Robert's fingers shook as he bent down to pick it up. Familiar eyes stared back, full of pain and recognition. The face had once belonged to someone he loved, someone he thought lost to the tides of life. "What? How?" he stammered, feeling the ground shift beneath him. The ground he had built his empire on. The tension in the room spiked, now electrified with shock. Laughter turned to murmurs of disbelief. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. Marcus took a step closer, his gaze fierce. "They were crushed beneath your ambitions, Robert. It's time to face what you've buried." With that, the walls of Robert's empire began to tremble. Was it guilt, fear, or something deeper? He felt the weight of it all bearing down on him, suffocating. The once impeccable facade started to crack, a storm building inside him he hadn't prepared for. Then came a loud crash. The restaurant's large window shattered with a thunderous violence. Glass rained down like confetti, and a figure emerged, wild and frantic, arms flailing. A protester, piercing the moment with an urgency that couldn't be ignored. "Stop! He's lying! Don't listen!" the intruder shouted, pointing at Marcus, shaking with desperation. The crowd gasped again. Chaos erupted. The power players recoiled, unsure. Their sanctuary now a battlefield of truth and torment. Robert stood frozen, lost in layers of fear, history, and unanswered questions. Who was telling the truth? Was Marcus the hero, exposing the darkness? Or was the intruder? Who was he? Was this chaos a distraction from something even worse? As the scene spiraled, Robert realized his world was on the brink of collapse. The specters of his past were rising, breathing down his neck. His legacy, his empire, everything was teetering, caught in the storm that had finally found him. Nothing would ever be the same. A wave of confusion washed over Robert as he clutched the photo tightly, realizing he couldn't run anymore. The truth was here, crashing down like the shards of glass around him. What lay ahead was unknown, shrouded in the darkness of his own making. And in that moment, Robert knew something terrible was about to unfold. Robert felt the air crackle with anticipation. Whispers faded. All eyes were on him. The weight of the note pulsed in his hand like a heart beating with dread. He glanced around the table. The laughter paused, faces frozen in a kind of horror. What kind of reckoning was this? Who are you? Robert's voice was barely a whisper, lost among the waves crashing outside. The tension wrapped around him, squeezing. He wanted to dismiss this, to laugh it off, but the truth gripped him tighter. Suddenly, the restaurant's huge glass windows shattered. An explosion of sound and shards. Gasps and screams erupted. The world outside slipped into chaos as a group of masked men stormed in, shouting orders, guns raised. The elegant atmosphere turned into a frantic nightmare. The illusion of wealth and power shattered in a heartbeat. Robert's instincts kicked in. He ducked under the table, his heart racing. Disbelief mixed with fear. His empire, his life, it all felt so fragile now. The masked figures moved with terrifying precision, commanding the space as if they had rehearsed this 1,000 times. "You, on the floor!" one shouted, pointing their weapon at a fellow diner. Robert peeked out, feeling trapped in a personal hell. Who were these people? What did they want? Panic burst like a dam. People dropped to the ground, some crying, others trembling in shock. The laughter that had filled the restaurant moments ago was gone, replaced by rancid fear. And then, the moment stilled. Marcus stepped forward, emerging from the shadows like a ghost from a forgotten story. Everyone froze. The masked men halted, their attention shifting. None of this made sense. "Marcus? Marcus?" Robert's voice dared to break through the chaos. "What are you doing here?" But Marcus didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the leader of the masked men, a look of recognition passing between them. It twisted Robert's stomach into knots. "Let him go," Marcus warned, his voice steady. "This isn't about you." Surprise flashed in the leader's eyes, but he regained his composure quickly, tightening his grip on the weapon. "And who are you to give orders?" he sneered. Something shifted in Marcus, a fierce determination. "You shouldn't be here. Not now." "Not for this." The air thickened with uncertainty. Then, Marcus turned his gaze to Robert, and for the first time, Robert saw something different in his eyes. Something fierce. Something powerful. "You don't remember, do you?" The questions flooded Robert's mind. Lost opportunities, choices made long ago. But before Robert could respond, a shot rang out. The world spun. The chaos erupted again. Someone screamed. Other diners scattered. Robert's heart raced as he ducked lower. The shot wasn't directed at him, but he felt the fear crawling up his spine. Bodies collided in the frantic scramble for safety. Tables turned, glass clinked and shattered. Amidst it all, Marcus stood resolute, eyes locked with Robert's, like a lifeline thrown into a storm. The leader's expression shifted. Recognition flickering, but overshadowed by rage. "We'll settle old scores today," he spat, pointing the gun at Marcus. In that instant, Robert understood. This was more than a robbery. It was a reckoning. A final look shot between Marcus and Robert. Filled with unspoken words, guilt, rage, the weight of responsibility. And then everything exploded into chaos again. A flood of questions erupted in Robert's mind, but one burned brighter than the rest. What had he done to lead them here? As the sirens wailed closer, Robert knew this moment had changed everything. The polished world he built was crumbling. He had to confront something deeper than just survival. The past was standing before him, and there was no escaping it now. How was he going to face what came next? Robert felt the air crackle with anticipation. Whispers faded. All eyes were on him. The weight of the note pulsed in his hand like a heart beating with dread. He glanced around the table. The laughter paused. Faces frozen in a kind of horror. What kind of reckoning was this? "Who are you?" Robert's voice was barely a whisper, lost among the waves crashing outside. The tension wrapped around him, squeezing. He wanted to dismiss this, to laugh it off, but the truth gripped him tighter. Suddenly, the restaurant's giant glass windows shattered, an explosion of sound and shards. Gasps and screams erupted. The world outside slipped into chaos as a group of masked men stormed in, shouting orders, guns raised. The elegant atmosphere turned into a frantic nightmare. The illusion of wealth and power shattered in a heartbeat. Robert's instincts kicked in. He ducked under the table, his heart racing. Disbelief mixed with fear. His empire, his life, it all felt so fragile now. The masked figures moved with terrifying precision, commanding the space as if they had rehearsed this 1,000 times. "You, on the floor!" one shouted, pointing their weapon at a fellow diner. Robert peeked out, feeling trapped in a personal hell. Who were these people? What did they want? Panic burst like a dam. People dropped to the ground, some crying, others trembling in shock. The laughter that had filled the restaurant moments ago was gone, replaced by rancid fear. And then, the moment stilled. Marcus stepped forward, emerging from the shadows like a ghost from a forgotten story. Everyone froze. The masked men halted, their attention shifting. None of this made sense. "Marcus?" Robert's voice dared to break through the chaos. "What are you doing here?" But Marcus didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the leader of the masked men, a look of recognition passing between them. It twisted Robert's stomach into knots. "Let him go!" Marcus warned, his voice steady. "This isn't about you." Surprise flashed in the leader's eyes, but he regained his composure quickly, tightening his grip on the weapon. "And who are you to give orders?" he sneered. Something shifted in Marcus, a fierce determination. "You shouldn't be here. Not now. Not for this." The air thickened with uncertainty. Then Marcus turned his gaze to Robert, and for the first time, Robert saw something different in his eyes. Something fierce. Something powerful. "You don't remember, do you?" The questions flooded Robert's mind. Lost opportunities. Choices made long ago. But before Robert could respond, a shot rang out. The world spun. The chaos erupted again. Someone screamed. Other diners scattered. Robert's heart raced. But he felt something else. A tie to this moment. The shot wasn't directed at him. It hit Marcus. Time froze. Robert's breath caught in his throat. Marcus staggered back, hand clutching his side, blood pouring like a crimson river across the white shirt. A scream of anguish escaping his lips. Everything blurred into chaos as people screamed, desperate to flee the scene. "Marcus!" Robert yelled, scrambling to his feet, suddenly forgetting the masked men. The world narrowed to just him and Marcus, who collapsed to the ground, face contorted in pain. The realization crashed down. This was his fault. He had pushed him into the spotlight, into the chaos. But as Robert crouched by Marcus's side, something else took over. The masked leader had turned his attention to Robert, and in that fleeting moment, Robert recognized him. A name slid over his tongue before he could hold it back. Alex? The leader paused, shock flashing across his face before it twisted into rage. "You shouldn't have said that," Alex spat, voice filled with years of betrayal. He pointed the weapon directly at Robert now. Everything shifted. The restaurant spun into mayhem, sirens wailing outside, the walls closing in. Robert's hands trembled as he clutched Marcus, who moaned softly, struggling to breathe. "Why?" Robert shouted, his heart pound echoing in his ears. How did this happen? All the pieces suddenly rearranging, revealing a sinister puzzle, a connection he never stoked. "I will make you pay for this," Alex hissed, and in that moment, the world turned. Marcus's eyes locked onto Robert's, a thread of understanding passing between them even as darkness closed in. The connection ran deeper than anyone knew. Old ties woven into fabric of their lives, choices made that led to this reckoning. And just like that, the past crashed into the present. Secrets would unravel, and Robert's empire would tear apart, as the truth loomed ever closer. What had he really built, and who would survive the fallout? Robert's breath caught in his throat, as the dim light of the restaurant dimmed around him, simmering with tension. The laughter faded, replaced by a dense silence. He glanced quickly at the note again, feeling the weight of the world click into place. Marcus. How did he know? Why was this man haunting him now, after all these years? As he scanned the room, he noticed heads turning. Shadows flickered behind polished smiles. People were watching, waiting. His palms turned sweaty on the table, dampening the fine linen. The walls felt closer, suffocating. He needed to shake this off. He'd built too much to let a ghost from his past unravel it all. But before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the restaurant. Glass shattered. A scream splintered the heavy air. Instinct kicked in. He shot up, eyes darting. The once serene dining room erupted in chaos. People rose from their seats, chairs clattering, voices overlapping in panic. "Stay calm," someone shouted, but the order was lost in the clamor. When Robert turned toward the noise, he saw a figure stagger into view. It was Marcus, but different. Blood oozed from a gash on his forehead, and his clothes were even more tattered, streaked with dirt and something darker. His eyes were wild, alive with the fire of truth. "Robert!" Marcus yelled, his voice raw and desperate. Robert froze, heart racing. The tension of the moment peaked. What was he doing here? How had he gotten in? Marcus lunged forward, gripping the table where Robert sat, chest heaving. In that instant, the world faded around them. The distant sound of waves crashing seemed to hush, as if the universe leaned in to listen. Then, Marcus pulled something from his pocket, a flash of silver, and suddenly time stopped. A gun. Gasps erupted like wildfire among the patrons. "No!" Robert's mind screamed. "This couldn't be happening! Wow! Not here! Not now! Sit down!" Marcus demanded, voice trembling yet fierce. "You owe me. It's time to pay." With that, the ambiance shifted. Gasps turned to murmurs. Voices dropped to whispers of disbelief. Eyes widened in shock as people pieced together who this man was. A broken ghost with a desperate plea. Robert's mind spun. He thought of the life he had built, the empire he had carved out of pain and sacrifice. Behind him, the crowd was a sea of fearful faces, every gaze on him. He wanted to shout back, to tell Marcus he didn't owe him anything, but the words stuck in his throat. "Help me," Marcus cried. "You turned your back once, don't do it again." And in that desperate plea, something cracked deep within Robert. The truth he had buried for so long shifted, pushing hard against the walls he'd built. The fear, the pain, it all roared to life in an explosion of memory. Just then, a sudden commotion. A heavy-set man in a dark coat pushed through the crowd. A bodyguard in every sense. "Get down!" he barked, moving toward Marcus, raising a weapon of his own. Another crack of fire, sharp and loud. Time seemed to slow as Robert's heart plummeted. What had just been an ordinary night had spiraled into chaos. The gun had been fired, but by who? And as the smoke cleared, Robert saw Marcus collapse onto the floor, life flickering in his eyes. The world spun faster, and Robert was caught in the whirlwind, left questioning everything he thought he knew. As the sirens wailed in the distance, there was no turning back. Secrets bared, lives shattered, and a single question hung heavy in the air. Who truly held the power in this twisted game of truth and betrayal? Robert felt the weight of the note in his hand, the roughness of the paper a stark contrast to the satin surrounding him. He glanced at the other diners, eyes narrowing in suspicion, wondering if any of them had noticed his unsteady grip. The laughter felt distant now, as if he were underwater, peering up at the surface. "Do you need anything, mister?" Harris? One of his companions at the table asked, his voice cutting through the fog. Robert shot a smile too wide, too false. "Just enjoying the ambiance," he replied. But the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He set the note down, heart pounding, eyes darting towards the entrance. He expected Marcus to burst through the heavy doors, a specter woven tight into the fabric of his past. Instead, the moment was shattered by a deafening crash from the street below. The sound rippled through the restaurant like a bullet, silencing every conversation. Glasses trembled, and some guests looked towards the windows, fear and curiosity painted on their faces. Robert's stomach tightened as he stood, instinctively moving toward the noise. The room shifted around him, patrons rising from their seats, straining to see. Shadows danced in the light, panic swirling like the waves just beyond the city. Outside, chaos unspooled. A car, sleek and black, was overturned, metal crumpling under the weight of what looked like a massive truck. Smoke curled into the air like a living thing. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, the world's soundtrack grating against Robert's ears. And then he saw her. Amidst the throng of bodies, stumbling back from the wreckage, a woman flailed. Her features were twisted with terror, hair streaming wild in the wind. Robert squinted, recognition crashing over him like cold water. It was Emily, his sister, lost to him for years. A distant memory hidden beneath the glitter of his empire. "Emily!" he shouted, but the word was lost in the cacophony. She turned, eyes wide, panic transforming her face into a mask of desperation. And then she froze, locking eyes with someone behind Robert. A chill ran down his spine. This was no mere accident. "Get back!" someone roared behind him. He felt a shove, fingers grasping at his collar, pulling him away from the growing chaos. Robert swung around, the world spinning as he faced Marcus, the man who had haunted him, the specter from his past. But this time, it was different. Marcus was not alone. Several men flanked him, their expressions grave, eyes burning with accusation. "What have you done?" Marcus growled, each word like a stone thrown into calm water, disturbing the surface. The indictment in his tone was heavy, loaded with a history Robert had chosen to forget. Then, before Robert could respond, the collision of metal and bodies erupted behind him. A piercing scream cut through the air, freezing everyone in place. A sound filled with anguish, raw and unrefined. Robert's heart raced. It was Emily's voice. The crowd gasped, eyes narrowing in confusion. Robert's breath hitched, his heart shattered. She wasn't just lost to him. She had been part of this twisted web all along. And suddenly, Marcus's words ricocheted in Robert's head. "We crossed paths before." The truth slammed into him like a freight train. The past wasn't buried. It was about to surface with a vengeance. Everything he thought he knew imploded. Choices made, lives ruined. And now, here they were. Every shadow, every secret, all converging in one terrible moment. Time froze. The room blurred. Robert had to face it. The truth had come back to haunt him, stronger than before. And it wouldn't stop here. The tension in the room was palpable. Robert's eyes darted to the other diners, their laughter now a distant murmur, the sound of crashing waves ringing in his ears. He was losing balance on his carefully constructed pedestal. He couldn't ignore the note. It felt like a noose tightening around his throat, squeezing out air. "What do you want?" Robert whispered, glancing around nervously, half expecting Marcus to emerge from the shadows surrounding the restaurant. But instead, from just past the velvet curtains, a figure stepped out. Tall, lean, and familiar. Too familiar. It was Andrew, his business partner. A man Robert had trusted, built with, and thought he knew. The very same man who had stood beside him, celebrating victories and shaking hands over deals. And now he was striding toward him, eyes burning with intensity. "Andrew?" Robert stammered, confusion flooding him. Was this a part of Marcus's game? Did he plan to drag everyone into the revelation? "It's not what you think, Robert," Andrew said, urgency laced in his tone as he reached the table. "We need to talk now." The whispers around the restaurant grew louder. Confused gazes turned toward their table, diners leaning in with curious interest. Robert felt heat rise to his face. Andrew's presence was drawing attention, and with it, questions swirling in the air. "Not now," Robert hissed, glancing around nervously. But Andrew wouldn't relent. "You need to understand before anyone else does. It's bigger than us." A cold knot twisted in Robert's stomach. What game was Andrew playing? He felt exposed, like a fish in a glass bowl. "What do you mean?" Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Andrew shifted, swallowing hard, revealing uncertainty behind his usual confidence. "Marcus, he has something you don't know. Something that could ruin everything you've built." Suddenly, a loud crash erupted behind them. A waiter fumbled a tray, glass shattering across the marble floor. The noise sliced through the tension, and all eyes turned that way. Panic set in, and Robert's heart raced. "Everyone look!" Andrew urged, awareness sharpening in his voice. "Look at the man behind the scenes! Look!" The chaos turned all heads as Marcus stepped into plain view. No longer a shadow, he carried an energy that crackled like electricity, a dark allure that rooted everyone in place. The whispers faded. This was no longer about Robert. Marcus had transformed, becoming the center of gravity. "Surprise, Robert!" Marcus shouted, his voice rich with contempt. "You think you're untouchable? You stole everything from me!" Robert's breath hitched, horrified and confused. "Stole? What are you talking about?" "Ask Andrew," Marcus taunted, eyes flickering to Robert's partner. "He knows everything. You berated me, seized my share, then built a kingdom on my back. You forgot, didn't you? The things I sacrificed. I didn't just disappear. I became a ghost of your greed." Robert's world crashed around him, reality twisting like smoke. The man he had used to climb was staring back at him, the truth laying bare amidst the shards of glass on the floor. Andrew's eyes flickered, shame washing over him, revealing betrayal just under the surface. Suddenly, everything unraveled. The empire Robert had built was built on lies. "How could you?" Robert whispered, taking a step back, hands trembling, heart racing with betrayal. "I didn't want to believe it either," Andrew replied, the weight of his words hanging heavy. "But I couldn't keep your secret anymore." The restaurant fell quiet, absorbing the truth. Each beep of the clock on the wall sounded like a countdown to disaster. In that moment, just as Robert's mind spiraled into chaos, a sudden flicker of hope sparked in Andrew's eyes. "But there's more to the story," Andrew began, voice low, urgent. And just like that, the walls around Robert trembled, reality shifting like an earthquake beneath his feet. He was losing everything. What was next? Would he unravel more secrets? Or would he sink, taking all he had built with him? The restaurant buzzed with stunned silence as Andrew spoke, the tension heavy like smoke wafting through the air. Robert could hardly breathe. The truth about his empire felt like quicksand, pulling him under. "There's more to the story," Andrew had said, and the words echoed ominously in his mind. But before Robert could process it, a sudden crash shattered the moment. A waiter dropped a tray, sending glass flying. Panic rippled through the crowd, cries mixing with the cacophony of shattering glass. Robert flinched, adrenaline surging, heart racing. Time stretched, unraveling like a frayed rope. Marcus's eyes locked onto Robert's, fierce and unwavering. "You need to confront your demons," he urged, voice filled with raw urgency. Just as Robert opened his mouth to respond, the restaurant's doors burst open. A group of heavily armed men stormed in, like shadows dancing in a nightmare. The tension hit like a hard slap. Gasps spiraled through the air as the crowd shrank back. The masked men moved with terrifying intent, shouting orders, weapons raised, chaos spiraling. "Get down," one shouted, pointing toward a shock-stricken diner. Robert felt that familiar swirl of fear tightening in his chest. He crouched instinctively, but Marcus stood tall, refusing to back down. "Not this time," he shouted, defiance igniting like fire. Then something shifted. A loud voice broke through the chaos, familiar, unyielding. "Stop." It was Emily, his sister, as if she had risen from the ashes of his past, rage etched on her face. She stepped forward into the fray, fiery and unyielding. "You will not do this, nor while I'm here!" Her presence pierced through Robert like a lightning strike. Time seemed to freeze, perfectly still yet heavy with every unspoken word. The men hesitated, caught off guard. It shifted the atmosphere entirely, like the tension before a storm breaks. "Emily?" Robert's voice echoed across the restaurant, disbelief mingling with relief and confusion. But then, before anyone could react, a scream erupted as one of the masked men swung his weapon, and the shot rang out, echoing like thunder. The crowd erupted into chaos, screams mingling with the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Robert's heart slammed in his chest. "No!" he yelled. He rushed toward Emily just as she fell to the ground, clutching her side. She gasped, shock etched across her features. Blood seeped between her fingers. "I tried to protect you," she gasped, warmth pooling beneath her. "No, Emily!" Robert knelt beside her, shock surging through him, heart racing. He pressed his hands against the wound, desperation overtaking him. That's when Marcus shouted, "They're here for you, Robert! You have to—" But the masked leader interrupted, a laugh reverberating around the room. "You think this is just about money? You've crossed paths with the wrong people." The chaos surged again, pushing Robert further, deeper into shock and regret. Then something unexpected happened. From the rear of the restaurant, another figure pushed forward, a woman, her features shrouded by shadows. But there was something about her. "Stop!" she cried, voice crystalline amidst the turmoil. "Hannah?" The name slipped from Robert's lips before he could stop it, disbelief washing over him. She was the one he thought lost forever, someone tangled in the web of his past mistakes. The masked men hesitated again, confusion flickering across their faces. The leader sneered. "You brought them, Robert?" Hannah stepped closer, eyes ablaze with determination. "You don't have to do this. This isn't the way." But it was too late. Gunfire erupted again, and the world fell apart. As Robert clutched Emily, lunging toward her, his heart shattered. The truth crumbled beneath him. Was this truly a reckoning? Was it his past returning to haunt him? All he had built stood suspended in the balance, a fragile illusion. And as chaos unfolded, Robert realized the biggest twist of all. Everything he fought to protect hadn't just been built on ambition, it was about to become a battleground for lives entwined in consequences. His own blood stirred, every heartbeat echoing the truth. Nothing would ever be the same. Secrets unraveled as the night continued to spiral, leaving Robert desperate and unmoored, questioning everything he thought he knew. Robert clutched Emily tighter, the warmth of her blood seeping through his fingers, mingling with the chaos swirling around them. He felt disbelief clawing at his throat. The world had crashed into a maelstrom of violence and desperation. "Stay with me," he urged, glancing frantically at her pale face. The sirens outside wailed, but it all felt too distant now against the terror that gripped the room. Fingers trembling, he pressed down harder. "Someone call for help!" he shouted. But the cries were drowned by the screams and chaos of panicking diners. Amidst the alarming confusion, Marcus stood unwavering, locked in a tense standoff with the masked men. "You can let them take this from you, Robert," he yelled, urgency thrumming in his voice. "Not again." In that moment, as Robert's heart raced, another masked man surged forward. "Back away from her!" the man shouted at Robert before a gunshot rang out again. A wave of sheer panic surged through the room. Robert flinched as time stretched, caught in the air like a suspended dream. He turned to see where the shot had come from, and in the madness, before he could react, a clownish figure stumbled through the door, wide-eyed, wearing a colorful wig and a red nose, breathless. The crazed laughter echoed in contrast to the chaos. "Surprise!" the clown yelled out, oblivious to the scene unfolding. "Party time!" What followed was bewilderment. For a split second, every eye flicked toward the intruder. Gasps rippled through the crowd, momentarily distracting from the growing turmoil. The masked men hesitated, visibly confused. "Stay back!" one of them shouted, raised weapon shaking in his grip. But then, like fireworks exploding in the night, live confetti cascaded from the clown's hands, glittering as it spun through the air. It felt surreal, too absurd for what was happening. It was a parody of life, a joke played in an unsettling atmosphere. A thin woman, caught amidst the chaos, let out a laugh. Shock rippled through the crowd, unexpected, uninvited. Laughter broke through the horror, a fragile thread of sanity unraveling in the chaos. Robert's muscles relaxed for just a moment, but then another gun fired, this time aimlessly, the crack reverberating painfully loud. The clown turned, caught in the line of sight, and suddenly, chaos erupted again. The comforting laughter turned into screams, horror folding back over the room like an ominous shadow. The clown stumbled backward, clutching his chest, shock spreading. "I just wanted to celebrate," he gasped, heart-stopping confusion in his gaze. "Get an ambulance!" Robert screamed, scrambling to his feet, adrenaline surging. But then another reality slammed into Robert like a freight train. His vision narrowed. The masked men were backing away, their focus shifting. "Release her!" one barked, pointing at Emily. Robert felt despair coil tightly around him. Emily weakly squeezed his hand, and in that moment, a revelation torched through the despair. She wasn't just his sister. She was a link to this twisted story he hadn't wanted to face. "Help me," she gasped. "When I was taken, they were trying to—" Before she could finish, the masked leader turned toward her, a wicked grin forming. Oh, you don't remember? Let's remind you. The room fell silent, every gaze starting to piece together what had been hidden. Emily's voice trembled. No, remember? The leader taunted, pulling out a small device, a flash drive, shining like a dark star. Your beautiful little world is built on lies, and now it's time to face the truth. As he pressed the button, the lights dimmed and screens flickered on the wall. Faces appeared, smiling, dark, shadowed, all somehow connected to the fraying threads of Robert's empire. The air froze. Figures stared back at him, entwined in a web of secrets. And then Robert realized this wasn't just about him. The roots of his empire twisted deeper, embracing every relationship he thought he could control. As the truth began to unravel, an unsettling feeling churned in Robert's stomach. Everything he had fought to protect, every lie that had woven his success, felt suddenly vulnerable, floating, weightless. And in that instant, Robert grasped the depth of the revelation. The clown, the bullets, the facade was cracking. The night was just the beginning of a nightmare. Was he ready to face what was coming? Was this chaos not a reckoning, but a revelation poised to spill everything he built into oblivion? The thought clawed at him. Silence enveloped the room as the past closed in, and Robert realized the true horror was still ahead. As he stared at the screens, a knot tightened in his chest. Everything was about to change, and he was at the unknowing center of it all, unraveling, trembling on the edge of an abyss. Would he break, or would he fight back? Robert felt the weight of Emily's blood against his hands, warmth mingling with the cold steel of chaos. The screens blinked with images of his empire collapsing. Moments he could no longer deny. He looked into her eyes, vivid and frightened, and in that instant, everything he held dear stood on a precipice. "Stay with me, Em," he shouted, fear pulsing through him. The room around them felt like a cage, filled with panic and uncertainty. As Marcus faced down the masked men, a roar of anger built inside him. "Enough of this!" he yelled, his voice fierce and unyielding. "This is not how it ends!" Everyone in the restaurant was frozen, caught between the truth and the momentary madness of the clown's interrupting chaos. The masked leader smirked, dismissing Marcus with a flick of his wrist. "What can a man like you do?" he sneered. But Robert broke free from his own despair. "You want the truth?" he shouted, voice rising above the noise. "Here it is." He stepped forward, the truth clawing up his throat. This empire wasn't built on my back. It was built on the sacrifices of people like Marcus and Emily. Hannah, standing slightly back, stepped into the light, determination crystal clear in her eyes. "You don't have to do this," she shouted to the masked men. "This cycle of pain ends tonight." The masked leader hesitated, confusion flickering in his eyes. It was just enough of the crack. Marcus saw the opening and charged forward, fists balled with resolve, adrenaline coursing through him. "Let her go," he demanded, fiery passion igniting hope. The tension hung thick in the air as the masked men faltered, momentarily shaken by the unity emerging from Robert's group. "Now!" Andrew barked. Seizing the moment, he dove toward the nearest masked man, aiming to disarm him. Chaos erupted once more as people scrambled, shouts echoing like thunder. the clang of metal against metal ricocheting in deafening clamor. Robert felt Emily's grip slacken. Panic surged anew. "Help is coming!" he yelled, though he couldn't be sure. "Stay with me!" She looked at him, eyes bright and fierce as she whispered, "Find the truth, Robert. It's all connected." Her breath faltered, and he held her tighter. The room exploded into cacophony, fists flying, bodies colliding. Suddenly, one of the masked men stumbled back, and Emily's scream cut through the noise. Robert turned just in time to catch the leader sneering at him. "I've taken enough from you. Now it's time to be stripped bare," he mocked, his voice low and lethal. But just then, the crashing sound of sirens pierced through everything. Hope ignited as doors exploded open, officers flooding the restaurant. "Get down!" they shouted, guns raised. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! The masked men had nowhere to run. They faltered, their power dissipating under the weight of justice. The leader glanced back, eyes wide with fear, ready to bolt. But Marcus lunged forward and tackled him to the ground. A camaraderie forged through a fire that refused to break. Sirens blared, and Robert's heart raced as he felt something lighten within him. Was it relief? He knelt beside Emily, eyes locked in an unwavering connection that spoke of shared histories, long-hidden fears, and the formidable will to survive. As the chaos settled, they pulled her onto a stretcher, the paramedics rushing to save her. But Robert felt the pull of unfinished stories as he looked at those around him. Marcus, Andrew, Hannah. They had fought this battle together. "I don't know what happens next," he said, looking into Marcus's eyes, "but we'll face it together." Moments passed, the tension soothing into an uncertain calm. But deep inside, Robert felt a stirring, a truth lost in the layers of. As Emily was wheeled away and chaos faded, whispers eruptaron alrededor. Shadows de la vida de Eli podrían heredar. Elvire Sarvos was bust. But now, Equitasti. Run. So te invito. Envicas, escucha, para que suscriban aquí a nuestro canal. Boom. Bien. También. Convence en stream de Que Potro. You don't want to miss the upcoming exclusive stories that are about to drop. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button and help the algorithm feed this wild ride. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about what just happened. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this ending. Don't wait even a second longer to share. Only true fans understand the importance of soportando el canal through these acciones. Let's keep this